The topic we're talking about today is mainly in the area of skin safety. The adverse outcome pathway is relatively well defined. This number 40 AOP has been worked on for quite some time now, has established key events, has 3 established, validated, accepted assays by the OECD. Nevertheless, there are still many opportunities to improve on our current methods. There's so many challenges, and I try to give an overview of that. We have models for ingredients, but at the end of the day, must remind ourselves we need to apply the information coming from assays or models, our integration, our weight of evidence to the practical decision making, going into formulations, and eventually the dossier that is prepared. Not only are we integrating in silico and in vitro data, but we're also trying to define these approaches. There are different algorithms that can be used, and there are some initiatives to try to standardize, make more defined, more reliable the results we get, and how they're then used in risk assessment and characterization, and eventually the regulatory acceptance of the dossiers prepared from the methods. We've been reaching out to by conversations in gathering perspectives. In the end, we want to hopefully provide this multi-stakeholder perspective, including industry perspectives, that will be helpful in advancing our use of data, our use of new approach methods. And just to summarize a couple of points here. First of all, information is the crucial currency that we're using in doing this kind of safety assessment work. Yet what we often see is this information is maybe not organized in an optimal way, takes people doing their work a lot of time to find. Often people may not have it structured for their purpose. They may not have the kinds of search or values available for their workflows. There's a lot of time spent trying to evaluate information to see if it's fit for purpose. And then even when we do that, we often may find it's difficult to judge the quality of data. And digging more deeply behind that, overall, there's a lot of need for improving the quality, improving the integrity in data, our trust of it, in this use of information. Also, I mentioned here extrapolation methods. Often it's difficult maybe to find parameters or methods, not just for the hazard assessment, but for our modeling of how to extrapolate to different kinds of human or population situations. There's a significant interest in making the data that is available both inside the company and outside the company more actionable. Data may be tied up in different ways in legacy systems and documents. So can we make data more actionable with modeling? Can we use AI methods to mine knowledge and extract data more effectively? And I guess everyone is faced with the complexity of emerging regulations, different regulations in different industries and different parts of the world, and understanding guidance and complying with that and all the variations, or perhaps the unexpected responses that they may get after submitting a dossier using this kind of NAMs. The daily work of assessment involves a quite intensive use of this information. In product development decisions, there's not maybe a lot of time to be trying to understand or deal with the complexities. So if this information from new methods is not more digestible, it's difficult maybe to use it in the time frame that decisions need to be made. If we have novel ingredients in our formulation decision making in new contexts, we may not have information or models available to make an assessment decision very easily, and yet we may not be able to do human or animal experiments, and so it's a difficult situation in terms of innovation in trying to assess new kinds of situations. There is often emerging tools, but is it digestible in terms of reference values that assessors can use in their work? There's a lot of variation in the way the assessment is done, so some tools can be used, but it's rather fragmented. We don't really have a way of sort of easily deploying a standardized workflow for the particular requirements of particular assessment situations. And so I would say overall, there's an interest in both trying to standardize the tool set and workflows available, but at the same time, having flexibility for working in different ways in different contexts. So it's not one tool or toolbox fits all. Finally, just a short summary on problems that seem important to the people we've talked to that are still work in progress or still a long way to go, or in some cases there's emerging solutions, but we need to figure out how to make them work. Predicting skin penetration in mixtures is an important problem, and we may need to reevaluate systemic toxicity when we have more penetration that was initially predicted. There's a strong interest in using read across so we can better leverage existing information on other compounds or other mechanisms that may be relevant for our own particular situation. We want inferers to do in silico and read across, and then give advice and support on which new approach methods could be used, and then orchestrating that information so we can bring it in with good uncertainty, so it can be used in the assessment work. There's quite a lot of methods that can be used for hazard characterization, but still more work needed that we can use the methods better for goals like potency to use in assessment. Often assays have been developed for certain kinds of chemistry, but do they work for fragrances is maybe a challenge that's relevant in a cosmetic product. Or we may have problems trying to assess low solubility compounds. May not be possible in certain kinds of in vitro assays unless we can test the compounds and formulations. We also have more complex materials and nanoforms where the standardized kind of IATA for the endpoint, like sensitization, it breaks down. It does not necessarily work for different kinds of chemistry. How do we assess plastics? How do we have a stronger reference set and method set for assessing, for example, lung sensitization, lung endpoints of those volatile compounds? How do we better model exposure and dose response and life cycle issues? How do we use the new approach methods in this part of the assessment work is more of an area with more development needed. And for that, I think a strong interaction between science and risk assessment communities, between the IATAs and the application of the information, seems to be a good consensus that we will benefit from that. I'm going to pass over now to Christophe as our second speaker,